welcome back to Coffee with Scott. I'm Jeff Brodus, VP of Operations at ISC, and we are joined today by
me, Scott
Hayes, repping SMU alma mater. Scott Hayes here, so a little bit extra tweak on the Coffee with Scott. But today's topic is all about leadership. So, we see a variety of different leadership styles out there in the business universe. One of the things that I think resonates well in a lot of offices and teams is those leaders who lead by example. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you might embody this principle and actions you've taken to do so?
Sure. Yeah. I've read all the books, management books on leadership, et cetera, and that a lot of them have good points. To me, it comes down to kind of the golden rule. Treat other people like you want to be treated. Try to be a good person that people want to help succeed, and listen to ideas. I never, think that I'm not a command and control kind of leader. I believe that by taking input from anybody that can come to us with a good idea, and if it makes sense for the client first, for the firm, and for the sales representative and so forth, then we can do it.
Well, I think that kind of holds true. We've seen our interns bring a variety of ideas and adjust some of our practices,
right,
like filming Coffee with Scott. So I think there's a lot to be added from anybody at any position. To your point, if we vet it out and make sure it works for all parties involved. Speaking of that, kind of a nice transition into staying adaptable, right? So can you speak a little bit about how the firm has adapted over time and your principles around ensuring that we stay adaptable?
Sure. Yeah. The only certainty in business is that there's always going to be constant change and uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
And in terms of the investment landscape, you just have to stay informed. You can't predict the future. All the projections are always inevitably wrong. But the best you can do is be prepared, be flexible as situations change. One example of that, back prior to 2009, from the start of my career through 2009 at ISC, we were in the record-keeping business. So not only did we provide investment advice and consulting for our retirement plan customers, we also did the bean counting, the reconciliation, sending checks and loans and 1099s and 5500s. And that was a big decision to make that decision to get out of that business unit. There was a lot of uncertainty around that, what would happen to our staff, and so forth. We did a national consulting RFP, and we selected a provider, and it actually all worked out very well in the end. And it turned out that it refocused us and got us more focused on our strengths, if you will, and more aligned with our customers' needs. And so it turned out to be a great move in hindsight, probably the best move of business decision I made, actually. Yeah. One of them anyway.
Well, and that's ultimately opened us up to navigate into new areas.
Correct.
Like the execution services business that
exactly.
we're in.
Yeah.
So, in terms of making decisions, ultimately, coming from your position, you've got to have confidence in the decision that you make. So can you talk to us a little bit more about your approach with sound decision making and kind of how you vet that out?
Sure. It starts with being as informed and educated as you can on whatever the topic is. Learn all the things you can about whatever the topic is. Seek input. I already mentioned that. I don't believe that I possess the best answer at all times, and I think getting input from other team members that have a stake in whatever that is, be heard and project their ideas, and then we ultimately decide once all the inputs are in there.
Yeah.
And known.
Well, and I've seen that firsthand, our trip to Colorado, where we had our meeting with kind of key stakeholders and shareholders in the firm, talking about the future and getting their input on it. So very collaborative process.
Very collaborative, and you're a prime example of that. At the same meeting we had last year up at Keystone, my advisor council, we discussed, kind of building off of the foundation that we have and bringing in you ultimately is who we picked to help set us up for the next generation of growth. So,
speaking of growth, inevitably innovation and creativity kind of follow suit with that. Talk to us a little bit more about how you encourage a culture of innovation here at ISC?
Sure. I think as a small firm in our niche, in our industry, as a broker dealer and investment advisor, one of our competitive advantages is that we can innovate and we can go outside the box. And if we find something new to pursue, like execution services, and it's good for the firm, good for the rep, good for the client first, obviously, then it's something we can pursue. And as a real life example of that, we already had the execution services going, but your guys came to us and said, well, what if we created this platform, right, for these secondary note, transactions? And said, let's do it. You built something out, and it was just fantastic. And, the execution team has grown and continues to innovate. And I think it's really a niche that we have in the market because of the input of you and, the team that has put that together.
Well, inevitably, as a part of growing or affecting business on a daily perspective, right, we want to ensure that we maintain integrity and kind of transparency in the things we're doing. Ergo, financial services industry, right?
Right.
But speak to us a little bit more about how we maintain integrity in our business transactions.
Yeah. So I've always believed in having a strong culture of compliance. Back many moons ago, I was the chief compliance officer in the firm, so I dealt with the regulators and so forth, and saw when you go out in client meetings, you understand the importance of always being transparent and integrity and so forth. One of my favorite sayings came from Warren Buffett. He's kind of my guru, from somebody I respected a lot growing up, and he back when he was the head of Salomon Brothers, he was testifying in front of Congress, and he said something that was pretty profound. It was like, lose money and I'll be understanding. Lose a shred of our reputation and I'll be ruthless. It's what he tells his employees, and it's really true and resonates with me because you spend your lifetime, your career, building up a position of trust, because the business we're in requires some level of trust, right, with managing people's money and lifetime of savings and so forth. And one bad actor can blow that, right? So in all of our dealings with all of our reps and our clients, we act as a fiduciary, most of the time, depending on the business unit, whatever. But it's just so important that we work with transparency and ethically.
Yeah. Well, I think compliance helps us keep the doors open and the lights on.
For sure, yeah.
Right. So speaking of keeping the doors open, we've talked a lot about growth and kind of integrity and so forth and so on. There has to be an element of continuing to push forward and learn to be able to grow and seek new ideas and so on and so forth. So how do you prioritize kind of the ongoing development within your leadership journey? And then maybe by extension, how do you prioritize that or help others prioritize that within the firm as well?
For sure. So early on in my career, I decided that education was, critical to my path. Got my MBA. I went and earned the CFA, charter holder designation, which is, it's a 3-year process to get that. I think that you always have to continue to learn. Now it's less formal, for me, but I read as many newsletters as I can, talk to industry experts, things of that nature. You just can't stop learning, right? It's a lifelong process. And I would advise, people, within our staff, if people want to seek new professional designations, CFP, different securities licenses, it's something that I always will support and pay for, if it can help the business. And so I believe firmly that education and a lifelong learning process will help you be a better advisor, leader, whatever.
Yeah. Well, and there's an element of that, for better or worse, that we can't get around, right?
As well, sure, yeah. Some of it's required, of course, but yeah.
Well, we appreciate you all joining us for another episode of Coffee with Scott. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you again next time.